Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Daniel Luria, Executive Director at Ateret Konim from Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. It's a little cold at the moment in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Not spiritually, but physically. I don't remember the last time it's been so cold, so close to Pesach. Well, I think it's the last cold spell before the beautiful spring Pesach time coming, and we'll hopefully see a lot or many of you back in Yerushalayim. I know the hotels are full. Flights are filling up, and Am Yisrael is returning home. I hope you're all well and healthy. I just wanted to say that I wish you a refuah shlema to a close friend of mine. I wish him well, who had a little bit of what you'd call a blockage in one of these arteries, a physical blockage of an artery, as opposed to clogging up the spiritual arteries. But we'll talk about that later with regards to kashrut and the foods that we eat. In any case, I wish Dov David Ben Rivka a refuah shlema, and anyone else who needs a refuah shlema, I wish all of you well, that Hashem looks after everyone. It's also this Shabbat works out my dad's yortzeit, Nachum Ben Yitzchak Isaac v'Yehudit. It's 7 years since Abba passed away, and may his neshama have an aliyah. A very unique man. I am who I am today because of him in many ways, as much as Mum, but more so Abba, in relation to Tzionut and Torah, making aliyah, feelings about Israel and Am Yisrael. He was also a doer. He was known as the head of Bnei Akiva, and made aliyah and fulfilled his dreams at some point by making aliyah to Ramot. And he is very much missed. In any case, it's 7 years, and maybe we'll talk a little bit later about the concept of 7 as opposed to 8. This is Parashat Shemini on the 8th day. We know that 7 is spoken about a lot in the Torah, whether it be Shabbat, which is the 7th day. We've got the 7 cycles of Shemitah, 7 days of Pesach and Sukkot. There's always the concept of 7, everyone knows, is very clearly in relation to who we are as a people. And even here, Moshe Rabbeinu, he practices, he does things, he's the korbanot, the Mishkan is going up and down for 7 days. And on the 8th day, it's like beyond nature in some ways. Like, nature is 7 days, and beyond nature is the 8th day, even the Brit Milah. We're taking something of nature that God has given us, which is a perfect, and we're saying that beyond nature, we're doing the Brit Milah and connecting ourselves to Hashem and to the Jewish people, past, present, and future, in a way that is beyond. And on this 8th day, he calls, of course, Aharon to come forward, who was probably a little bit hesitant. Maybe it was his connection with the Egel HaZahav. Maybe he thought that only Moshe could do it, but Moshe says to him, Aaron, just do it. I think Nike got it from here. Just do it. Whenever we have a fear of something, sometimes you have to dive in and do what is right. Just do it. And he came along, and as we know, the Shekhinah came down. It was a very unique time. I read somewhere, I don't remember where it was, that there were some of the korbanot that were brought by Aaron. He had to bring a calf, and there was another a goat that was actually bought for Bnei Yisrael. And I read somewhere that both of these sacrifices, these korbanot, in order to lihitz karev, to get close to Hashem, was all about correcting something of the past. So the Egel HaZahav, there was some inyan that Aharon was part of it. So sacrificing the calf, it was like closing the cycle for the negative spirituality of the Egel HaZahav. And so too with the goat. What was Bnei Yisrael's connection with the goat? Well, we know the whole going down to Mitzrayim, the jealousy and the divisions within the family and between the siblings at the time, as we know. But with Yosef, ultimately, he was sold down to slavery, and everything started. The whole of the galut started because of this fighting between the siblings. And what did the brothers do? They dipped his coat into some goat's blood. They killed a goat and they dipped into some goat's blood. So in order to, in some ways, to heal or to rectify that, in the same way, there's this goat being given as a reversal, or as I said, as a healing for the Mishkan. Soon afterwards, as we know, 2 of his sons, Nadav and Avihu, no one's 100% sure what exactly happened there. One thing we do know is that there was no instruction to go ahead and do it. but they were on a spiritual level, but this one little slip of doing something that wasn't, you can't do whatever you feel like. I feel like sacrificing. I feel like I'm on a spiritual high. That may be all well and good, but there is still a framework to work into. A person just can't go out and do whatever he feels like in relation to the service of Hashem. There are some things that obviously is very personal, and we do it individually, whatever our heart and our neshama tells us to do. But at the same time, there is still a framework. And two of his sons did something when they went in. And they, with the incense, and as we know, they were killed by the fire from Hashem. Aaron, of course, was silent. Maybe that's a message many times. In fact, I think during the Shiva today, one is not meant to really start up a conversation unless the person sitting Shiva initiates. I'm not sure that's not a law necessarily, but it's a nice minhag. There's a time when one has to be silent sometimes. Where life may not make sense. We're not God. We don't understand everything. We don't have the explanations and understanding of every aspect of the roadmap that we're on or anyone else is on. And sometimes you can't make sense of life. And there's a time for someone to be silent. And that was Aharon at that time, after his two children were killed for bringing the Esh Zara. Maybe didn't listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. There's many different possibilities, what they did wrong, or why they were ultimately punished, even though they were trying to lead Karev to Hashem. But it's definitely a very important message about, working within a framework, yet giving it at the same time a certain amount of individuality for every person. The other aspect of the parsha, of course, is all about kashrut. We've got the animals with the split hooves and the chewing the cud. We've got the fish with the fins and scales. And by the way, if you ever see a fish with scales, it's for sure got fins. But the reverse is not necessarily true. It's a way sometimes that you can know whether a fish is kosher if you're caught somewhere overseas. In any case, and then of course there's a list of all the non-kosher birds, some of which we know, some of which we're not 100% sure. It usually goes by the masoret, even with regards to the animals. There has to also be a masoret, because a giraffe theoretically would be kosher, but because it's not a masoret, we don't know exactly where to, even though there's a long jugular vein there, that's for sure. It's not the masoret, therefore it's not eaten. It's also a protected animal, so I'm not asking anyone to go out and start eating giraffe. But the laws of kashrut, I think we underestimate them a little bit, especially those of us who may be brought up into a kosher home and you don't know anything else. We don't necessarily think about it, but we should. And maybe this is the parsha that we can think about how beautiful it is, yes, to sometimes be different. Am Yisrael is a different nation. We have a different responsibility. We're an Or Laguyim. We're not better necessarily, but we are definitely different. We are chosen. And one of the ways to keep that difference, to ensure the continuation of the Jewish chain, is by having a Jewish and a kosher home. It protects us, just like the mezuzah in some way protects us. The kosher home protects us in a way that sometimes we can't imagine. People that don't keep kosher, who knows? Suddenly you go out and you're mixing with non-Jews and you're marrying out. I'm not saying it automatically happens when you don't keep kosher, but when you open the door to not keeping kosher, not to mention the fact that you're limiting, your religious friends that can't come over, but you open yourself up to spiritual problems and interaction with groups of people that may be problematic. So it really is the definition of a Jewish home, a home which is kosher. There's obviously aspects to it that may even make sense for me. So with these fins and scales, for example, there are many ways to understand all of this. Obviously, it's not just the health, as we said earlier. There's obviously a spiritual angle to this whole thing. What exactly it is, we don't know. We're meant to keep the laws no matter what, but it's nice to find maybe some spiritual nice ideas behind it. For example, in the fins and scales I read somewhere, the fins help us move forward. And the scales, it's like some type of protective gear. And, we know that this relates, for example, to learning Torah. There's one thing learning Torah, moving forward with nice thoughts and innovations, but if you don't have the fear of God and proper emunah, then it's not enough. It's not enough just to have thoughts and innovations, just learning, without the fear of Hashem and proper emunah. You need the combination. You need both the fins and the scales. We know that the kosher birds are, as it works out, they're non-predatory, they're peaceful, they're non-destructive. That's an idea behind all these things, even the animals, not just the birds, but even the animals also. Maybe the closed hoof has something to do with rigidity, and we're more interested in something which is more split and open, to be more open and to be a little bit more sensitive. So there are probably many ways, and each of you can maybe find some nice ideas behind many of the laws of kashrut that we've got. Obviously the clearest one is obviously the pig, a chazir, who wants to touch pork, etc. Although we should know that, I don't know exactly where it's written, but it's written somewhere that one day, Bizman HaMashiach, the end of days, maybe the pig will become kosher. The name, think about it, the name is chazir, from the same three letters as lachzor, to return. It will return one day. It won't be hypocritical. It won't be something nice on the outside and something horrible on the inside, being that it doesn't chew its cud, but it's got split hooves, because it seems as if that it's a kosher animal. Oh yeah, it's got split hooves. But on the inside, no, it doesn't chew its cud. It doesn't regurgitate food. Nothing comes up. So, by the way, chewing a cud is something else. Maybe the whole concept, a nice idea behind that is take things slowly, consider things, where something comes up. I'm not saying to regurgitate everything, but not just don't act. It doesn't go straight away down. It comes up. We have to be pensive. We have to think twice before we act. Even that's an idea behind it. So the pig, the chazir, even though it seems kosher, obviously it's not, and one has to be very, very careful how we behave, and what we are on the inside. There's no use putting on a nice smile and thinking that you actually hate the person that you're looking at. That wouldn't be right. There's no hating in the lev. There shouldn't be any hating whatsoever. But one's actions should mimic one's inside, basically. But yes, that's very interesting. If someone can find me the source of that chazir, where he will choser bizman HaMashiach, I'd actually like to know that. So that's the parsha. It's a beautiful parsha. It's a beautiful time now. We're about to get close to the 1st of Nisan. By the way, the 1st of Nisan was also when the 8th day of the inauguration was. So we've learned a little bit about the Mishkan, about Aaron being silent, about just doing things moving forward, the kashrut, the 7 and 8, the kosher home. I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, an aliyah for my Abba's neshama. He is greatly missed, and a refuah shlema to a close friend of mine in the Galut of Australia, David Dov Ben Rivka.